1,300 kilometers beyond mainland Norway, deep inside the Arctic Circle, lies a community living under one of the strangest laws on Earth. You are not allowed to die here. This is not a myth, it's a real rule. And breaking it isn't just illegal, it's dangerous. Beneath the frozen ground, bodies do not decompose, remaining perfectly preserved for decades. As the climate warms, these centuries-old remains could release ancient viruses and bacteria, turning Longyearbyen's frozen past into a global warning for the future. For a long time, the laws of the universe seemed simple. The sun rises, the tide falls, and all life inevitably finds its end. But 1,300 kilometers past the Norwegian mainland, deep within the Arctic Circle, exists a civilization that has chosen to opt out of the final equation. A community governed by a bizarre and simple decree. You are forbidden from dying here. This is not a myth, not a superstition. It is an act of necessity forced by a geology that refuses to cooperate. The ground here is permanently frozen, meaning anything placed beneath the surface remains preserved. Forever. The law was enacted after scientists made a terrifying discovery. Bodies buried over a century ago, victims of the deadly 1918 Spanish flu, were exhumed, and the virus within them was found to be perfectly intact and potentially viable. The people of Longyearbyen are in a fight against their own environment, racing against a warming climate that threatens to melt the permafrost and unleash a hidden pandemic. So what happens to the sick? And how do you keep the greatest killer in history it's from waking up? Longyearbyen was founded in 1906 as a coal mining town, carved from the frozen wilderness by hardy pioneers seeking fortune in the Arctic. Life was never easy here. Winters were long, brutal, and merciless, with darkness swallowing the town for months. Supplies were scarce, isolation was total, and the icy landscape demanded vigilance. But the greatest threat came not from the cold, nor the polar bears, nor even the isolation. It came from the dead beneath the ground. In the early 20th century, residents buried their dead in the small cemetery at the edge of town, unaware that the frozen ground would trap bodies in a state of perfect preservation. Decades later, scientists would exhume these graves, victims of the 1918 Spanish flu, only to discover a horrifying truth. The virus remained viable, frozen in time, still capable of causing disease. It was a revelation that changed the rules of life in Longyearbyen forever. The permafrost, once a silent guardian, became a potential weapon. The ground beneath the town could no longer be trusted to contain death. To protect the living, the town enacted a law that seems almost unthinkable. Anyone terminally ill must be flown to the mainland before they die. Anyone who dies within the settlement is immediately transported out. Burial here is forbidden. The dead do not rest in Longyearbyen. They leave or they never leave at all. Over the decades, the town has adapted. Doctors and researchers ensure that the sick are evacuated in time. Families prepare for the eventual removal of loved ones. And the community thrives, always aware of the strange, invisible law that governs their lives. Yet, the law is not only a response to past dangers. The Arctic is changing. Rising temperatures threaten to thaw the permafrost, and with it, the centuries-old secrets buried beneath. The very ground that once forced the town to ban death may one day unleash it again. In Longyearbyen, the inevitability of death is managed with strict efficiency. The town faces a challenge unlike anywhere else on Earth. They must acknowledge mortality without allowing it to remain in the local environment. The law is clear and uncompromising. Residents diagnosed with terminal illnesses, from advanced cancer to severe heart conditions, must leave the island before death approaches. They are flown over 2,000 kilometers to the Norwegian mainland, usually to a hospital or hospice in Tromsø. The local hospital is equipped for emergencies, but not for prolonged end-of-life care. Living in Longyearbyen means understanding this reality from the very start. Sudden death, too, is handled with the same cold, logistical precision. Accidents are not uncommon in this harsh frontier. When someone dies unexpectedly, the body is immediately secured, prepared, and transported by plane to the mainland for burial or cremation. There is no room for ceremony within the town. Survival and safety take precedence over tradition. The same principles of preservation that make these rules necessary are reflected in another iconic facility just outside town, the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. Here, the world's seeds are preserved in sub-zero conditions, to protect life for the future. In Longyearbyen itself, that same relentless cold once preserved death from the past, a stark reminder of the power and danger of the Arctic environment. This modern system is pragmatic, a solution to a biological and geographical problem. Yet it raises deeper ethical questions. What does it mean to live somewhere where you cannot die? And do residents truly have the right to remain in the place they call home, even in death? In Longyearbyen, life is vibrant, survival is essential, and death is an outsider. Every resident lives under the awareness that nature, law, and science have joined forces to create a town where mortality is carefully managed, a place where the final act of life is forbidden. For decades, Longyearbyen solved the century-old problem of undecomposed bodies with a simple logistical rule: the dead must leave. But today, the original threat has taken on a new, unstoppable force: climate change. The permafrost that once locked away deadly pathogens, including the 1918 Spanish flu virus, is now rapidly thawing. The Arctic is warming nearly 4 times faster than the global average. The ground that once kept viruses frozen and inert is becoming unstable, slushy, and unpredictable. Scientists and residents now face a terrifying possibility. As the permafrost melts, centuries-old biological material could resurface. The very pathogens that forced Longyearbyen to ban death, from influenza to ancient bacteria and even viruses we have yet to identify, may emerge from their frozen tombs. Each rising degree of temperature increases the risk of reintroducing these historical threats into the ecosystem. Longyearbyen has become a frontline warning station for the world. Researchers study the thawing landscape not only to understand climate change, but to prepare for what might emerge from the frozen archives beneath our feet. The town's unique history, banning death to protect life, has revealed a chilling universal truth. What is frozen in time does not disappear. It simply waits. The Arctic may be silent, but it is not empty. Beneath the ice lies a past that refuses to stay buried, and a future that demands constant vigilance. Longyearbyen is more than a novelty law or a curious Arctic fact. It is a powerful lesson for the world. Here, history, law, and science collide with the relentless forces of nature. The town's most striking rule, that no one may die within its limits, is not superstition, but survival. The frozen ground preserves bodies for decades, sometimes centuries, turning death into a dangerous force that cannot simply be ignored. This law serves as a stark warning. The ice holds more than just cold and snow. Ancient viruses and bacteria lie dormant, waiting for warming temperatures to awaken them. What was buried in the past could emerge to threaten the future. Longyearbyen's struggle is both local and global, a reminder that humanity must respect the past while preparing for the unforeseen consequences of a changing climate. Life here depends on understanding that modernity cannot control nature. Residents adapt daily, balancing survival with caution, aware that the environment writes the rules. Longyearbyen challenges our assumptions about life and death, forcing us to confront uncomfortable questions. How much control do we truly have over our world, and what consequences await as the ice continues to release its frozen secrets? In the end, Longyearbyen is a mirror for humanity, showing that respect for history, humility before nature, and preparation for the future are not just wise, but essential. What do you think of this law? Would you ever consider living in a town that bans death? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to see more fascinating stories from the world's hidden corners where science and reality intersect, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching.